we will see the attendees getting added
Okay, fine.
to the webinar room. So we have Rahul, Nilesh, and Pankaj from ICICI. We have Ravi, and we have Dina moderating it.
Okay. Hi, Dina.
Hi, Murli.
Hi.
Hi, Murli, Pankaj here.
Hi, Pankaj. How are you?
Fine,
Hi, Nilesh.
absolutely fine. Yeah.
Hi, Rahul.
Hi, Murli, Nilesh here.
Well, this is most sought after session, I must say. People are all having cash flow issues, waiting to hear some good advice.
We can start, Murli.
Yeah? Okay. Sure.
People are
Okay.
joining still. There are 37 people who have already joined.
So we can give some time, maybe 1 minute, because generally people have some issues connecting and meeting. It is increasing. Let's wait until it reaches some plateau. Let's wait for the curve to be flattened.
So Murli,
New terminology.
webinar or real event, we have to see this increase in count.
Actually, when I was running an account, if the curve is flattened, that means my job was in danger. So,
Yeah.
curve has to keep going up. That's the only way you could keep your job.
So this is not broadcasting; it says recording. Okay. So the left corner screen, it will appear, right? Now it's still recording.
Okay. Maybe we can start now. Yeah. Okay. So good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Many IT companies are experiencing, cash flow issues since the lockdown has started, especially the SMEs, as they have lost few clients and seeing reduction in revenues. Whatever surpluses they may have invested in stocks or bonds, that's also going down in value with some haircuts. Risk of doing business in the next 1 year is increasing. So everyone is waiting to hear some good advice on how to navigate the troubled waters until normalcy returns. Well, your wait is over. Welcome to the most awaited session of ICS Net Series. Protect, secure, thrive, financial risk, and digital banking strategies for a lockdown era. Let me introduce the host and moderator for this session, my friend Dina. His full name is Dinanath Harpanhalli. He is the founder and CEO of Lifecycle, a sports tech startup. He is an accomplished corporate leader, author, avid cyclist, and entrepreneur. His latest venture, Lifecycle, provides cutting-edge technology products for sports. Prior to this, Dina was a country head for Invesco in India, and prior to that, he held various corporate positions in the areas of merger and acquisitions, and private equity, strategy consulting, and financial services technologies. Dina also has an MBA in finance and strategy from Carnegie Mellon University, and a Bachelor of Engineering in Electronics and Communications from Karnataka University. So clearly he is the most qualified to be the moderator, and I'm sure he will deliver a great session for you. Over to you, Dina.
Thank you, Murli. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Net Series session. I did participate in the prior few sessions that HICIA has broadcast, and I have to say, HICIA, this is a fantastic idea, and also very timely and a very convenient format. And I was pleasantly surprised when Srini asked me to host this session and moderate this session. And obviously, this is a season of getting scared. So I thought I was scared that I didn't have all the answers. But then when he told me about the session, I didn't have to have all the answers. I just had to have questions. And I'm sure we all have plenty of questions. And we got 3 gentlemen from the industry that is right there in the middle of all this to come and answer our questions, not so much from a theoretical session, perspective, or from a viewpoint of an academic sense, right? So this is more a practitioner's view. This is real. Some of these things we can take away and execute as early as today. And I guess one thing that this whole COVID season has taught us is an immediate execution. So from idea to execution, we hope it's measured in minutes now. So my approach to this whole session is going to be less of making any points and answering any questions, but I would want the 4 experts that are there on the panel, and I'll introduce them in a quick minute, get them to highlight a few things initially. So we'll spend about 35 to 40 minutes talking about some of the core topics that we believe that we've already seen are relevant and people are coming up with these questions. And then we will be ready to take your questions. Hopefully we'll be able to answer as many of those as possible. In case if there are a few left, which from the trend I'm seeing in the last few sessions, there are quite a few questions in the session, which is a good indicator that there is a great deal of interest in all these. We will follow up. Haisya will send you the deck, and we will also consolidate your questions and provide the answers for those. So without further ado, the 4 gentlemen that are on the session are in no particular order. Ravi Rao, MD of Value Momentum. Pankaj Gadgil, he's a country head for self-employed segment in ICICI. And interestingly, he's also on the board of NPCI. And Nilesh Mundra is a COO for ICICI Investment. And for those fortunate few who have some cash left, they have to have some strategies. And for those who don't have much, they also have to have some strategies. So Nilesh, we're looking forward to this particular segment. And obviously there is risk and we need to cover it. So I will I'll just make a couple of points about how this whole scenario has to be viewed primarily from our member base perspective. So this is not a very macro session. So we want it to be as relevant as possible. So I have one slide and I'll walk you through that. And then I want Ravi to jump in and provide his perspective from the industry. And then in order, I think we have Nilesh first, and then Rahul, and then Pankaj. All right. So Nilesh, if I can have the next slide. So while that is coming up, I think I'm just hoping that the whole comedy era of COVID through memes that is hitting us every day will get to some real comedy and relief in our life. And one particular segment I'm expecting is a session on force majeure. I don't know how many of us had even seen that clause, let alone think about it before. So we'll get to that in a minute. But if you really look at the SME perspective, right, this is not a Fortune 500 view of the world. And my friend Ravi was kind enough to put these stats here. So I'm going to steal some of that material and make a point about the distinction between core and non-core. So quite to the contrary of a reality of a Fortune 500 firm, SMEs are faced with a stark contrast. Core accounts for 36% of SME business, and the non-core 64%. Of course, we can get a little more minute about classification of core versus non-core, but the message is very clear. SMEs end up spending a lot more time keeping the house and simultaneously facing the challenge of going to the market and doing their business. In all this, if you look at finance and banking, that's a whopping 12%. So 20% of our non-core and 12% of our major activities that we do are relevant to this session. And some of it has to do with the lack of economy of scale that a SME might be in compared to a large company, but that's a reality. So we have to view it from this perspective, and who's better to do that than Ravi, because Ravi has been very active in the SME sector, especially through Haisya over the last few years. So Ravi, why don't you tell us a few things that you have come to summarize in the last few days?
Actually, as I pointed out here, we do notice that a whole lot of stuff is done manual. There's lack of use of technology during the initial days when the size is small. Only when the company starts growing bigger, we tend to move away from everything that's done around Excels. Thankfully, today, over the last few years, we've had a good number of what you call SaaS kind of tools becoming available. And also you've had, in a minute, we'll also start covering more of what the banks can perhaps do, extending the their own presence as an ecosystems player. So largely, if you look at whatever is your core offering to the market, if you're able to focus on that and probably let others, rest of the activities be taken care by use of technology, by aligning with a proper bank, and with the extended capabilities that the bank can get in, I think you can make some progress. So, but then that's the headline summary. But then also the point is for an SME, for whatever as we get into the next slide on the topic, it talks about the different needs that are there for a typical SME across various stages of the evolution. We'll come to that, but my take on this particular topic, which is protect, secure, and thrive. The way we would like to look at it is, of course, as Dina pointed out and Murli pointed out earlier, there is a definite need for financial savviness, both in terms of protecting as well as securing, and there is also a definite need for being savvy in terms of being able to enable technology to help people delivering from home without any impact to the outcomes and what you have promised to the customer. We will also talk about that, and towards the end we will summarize what is it that we've been doing as a practitioner, as a person, as a company that's been impacted in this pandemic time, and then what all we have done across each of these dimensions.
Yep, Neeraj, if I may ask you to change the slide.
Yeah, next slide, please.
Yeah, one.
Dina, I would like to cede time to you. Would you like to add anything before I slip into this?
This is good, Ravi. And for those of you who couldn't catch this slide while Ravi was speaking, it will be in the deck when it is sent. And in fact, I will keep coming back to you, Ravi, after each of these following sessions, and then we're going to touch on some of these. All right. So next slide, Neeraj, please.
Okay. What I was trying to say. Sorry, kindly. What I was trying to say here is, as I was mentioning, actually, it's the title is also apt when you see Net Series by ICIA. See, when for a typical SME, if you really look at all the phases, launch phase, stabilization phase, and the growth phase and expansion phase, apart from what you see in black, which is what typically a banking organization can extend the olive branch to help you. But many of those things in terms of market insights, networking, let's say a potential e-commerce platform, referrals for companies for you, referral for talent that's available in the market. A whole lot of it is in fact is available through a platform like ICIA. Maybe I would encourage the people who are non-members of ICIA to probably reflect, and maybe do a checkbox of your own requirements across various stages. How perhaps being a part of the network can really kind of help you. Now, okay, coming back, as you can see in the stabilization phase, how do I manage bookkeeping? So how to build and fund, retain my supply chain? How to optimize costs in the wake of economies of scale and demand being a mismatch. Coming next, how do I get access to working capital? As you're growing, you need. And let me tell you, as a business that's 19 years old, we have gone through each and every single phase, and been happy to say that we have been working with ICICI Bank, and we've been able to probably access many of those products. Yeah, and then finally, we've actually gone through the entire cycle, and even in this stage of expansion, we've had the pleasure of working with some very unique products of ICICI in terms of accessing loan from external commercial borrowing, and then probably even doing some getting strategies on interest rate swaps, and then of course on trade finance and several of those. Next slide. I would probably then invite my fellow panel speaker to definitely help us navigate as to what are the kind of products they have that will help SME business actually do well in serving their own customers in this ecosystem.
So we'll go to the next slide, Neeraj. So before I call Nilesh to talk about some of the investment strategies, etc. So one of the things that we were brainstorming while we were planning this session is to bring you some real case studies, some real world information, so that it can actually be relevant for the situation we are in. So without any further ado, so Nilesh, over to you.
Yeah, I hope I'm audible, Dina.
Yeah.
You are. Please go on.
Thank you. Can we move to the next slide, please? And I'll just give a perspective of what we're talking about over here. So essentially, right now, as we are in an environment where markets have gone through a lot of turmoil, and as the fellow panelists were talking about, we have had equities and we have had bonds kind of going through their own cycle. Today, we are clearly witnessing most of our clients and across the board, industry level, there's a clear migration which is happening from risk assets to risk-free assets. So to put things in context, when we look at data at the industry level, and I can only kind of comment upon the inter-month data that we have as of now from mutual fund side, there's a clear shift that we are witnessing, which is happening from debt-oriented mutual funds to liquid mutual funds. Now, you know that what has been happening, interest rates have been a bit volatile, and then there has been a bit of action which has happened in the credit space. So clearly, there's a migration which is happening. Our philosophy from the perspective of, let's say, something like an SME, where you have to kind of manage your cash flows on a day-to-day basis to serve your business from a 2-month, 3-month perspective, 6 months perspective, the cash that you have, what should be the strategy around it? And actually, counterintuitively, seeking safety that way is not a big deal. I mean, in the sense that you don't really have to do too much of hard work. It's just that you have to explain yourself that, as you seek safety, as you seek liquidity, your returns obviously fall. That's fine in the current context is what we see, and that's what is getting witnessed across the industry. So there's a shift, as I said, which is happening from bond funds to liquid funds and bank deposits. And what you see in the slide also is the same thing. If somebody who has a horizon and who has liquidity which is just good enough to kind of manage for 3 months, just be in, you can always keep it in bank account for that matter. But if, you want to kind of have a little bit of return, a liquid fund would be just appropriate. It doesn't yield you significant in present context, but at least it gives you somewhere between 4.5–5%. And I'm assuming here taxation is not a concern. Somebody who has a horizon of 3 to 6 months and maybe, let's say 50% kind of going in 3-month bucket and 50% going in the 6-month bucket, obviously bank deposits go there. And customers that we have seen, SME customers, SCS customers that we have seen also choose ultra short-term funds. But clearly the safety and non-volatility of bank deposits gets scored. So this is the current environment that we're talking about. And beyond 6 months, obviously, there are products which are available like money market funds, which give you a slightly higher yield. But once again, the certainty of return as a bank deposit is concerned is clearly getting scored in present context. In times when you have risk on, when, when growth is good and the overall economic environment is booming, generally people prefer to be in mutual funds. Generally, people prefer to be in mutual funds, but today is a time when I think bank deposits are clearly getting scored. Quickly moving on to the other aspect of those companies or those, I would say, corporates which have reasonably good liquidity, reasonably good cash flows for more than 12 months or so, then of course the strategy can be a bit more nuanced. Of course, the principle remains the same: safety, followed by liquidity, and followed by returns. And I'm presuming in that case, taxation becomes a bit of a consideration rather than in the previous scenario. What we are seeing people doing in this case is those who are kind of having a horizon of more than 12 months up to 36 months. Today, depending on the liquidity requirement, bank deposits are kind of getting scored over. But many customers are also looking at corporate deposits. And when I say corporate deposits, these are, well high-rated third-party deposits like that from maybe a few housing finance companies or maybe a few, top-notch rated NBFCs, which are in the constant need for borrowing. So there you get a slightly higher yield, but they might not be as liquid. Somebody who has a clear 24 to 36 months horizon, I mean, there the solution can be a bit more nuanced. As I said, there one could look at some of these good quality corporate bond funds, and the bank can provide a line against those to the extent of 70-80% of the value, so that while you continue to kind of earn a reasonable yield on that, for your temporary liquidity, one can always borrow from the underlying line that the bank provides. So this is the structure, I would say, and we can take more questions around it if there are any. This is the structure that we are seeing is working for most of the corporates in general. And then there is a very small proportion of corporates or customers who are deeply cash liquid and predominantly kind of managing their own wealth. For them, I think you can take a growth oriented strategy, but maybe, I'll pause over here and request my other panelists to kind of, come in and spend time and maybe take more of these in Q&A if there's any need. There is another slide that I have, if you can move on, but I would say that this is more for those customers slightly more technical in nature and maybe can be avoided. The point which you're saying here, just a perspective that those who have a growth oriented strategy, today equities offer a brilliant opportunity because valuations have fallen pretty much in line with what we had seen in last two crises in last 12-13 years. One was 2008 itself, and then one was 2013 when we had a big taper tantrum and Indian asset prices had kind of seen a significant amount of collapse. And this chart essentially tells you the same thing, that today market is kind of has fallen to a very attractive level. But this is clearly for those guys who are looking for long-term growth and not for SME customers or SES customers who have to manage their day-to-day liquidity. Yeah, I'll just pause over here and maybe Rahul, you can come in.
Yep. So next slide, Neerja, if you don't mind.
Yeah, you can move on. Maybe I can cover it later if there are any questions. Yeah.
Sure. So before I hand it over to Rahul, every crisis presents very good set of insights and examples. When demonetization happened, one of the things that we all sat back and wondered, who would be in a position to take that enormous surge in the digital payments that happened. And I think it's good that we have the same guys on the panel today, because the ICICI came out pretty strong because of the scalable infrastructure. And when we go to Pankaj's session, I would specifically like to explore that, the India stack and all that. But in the meantime, another very insightful example that came out in insurance was apparently Wimbledon had been paying £1.5 million for the last, 17 years. And now when this pandemic was announced, that's why the pandemic status announcement from WHO was very critical for this. They stand to gain 125 million in the claim against the pandemic insurance. So you never know what a smart risk manager can do for your business. And that's why when we were looking, we found ICICI Lombard and put that they're business cousins of the other two gentlemen on the panel. So I want Rahul to talk a little bit about how SMEs can, or any business for that matter, can secure the business. There's a second theme of this session. And just to give a couple of pointers in context, ICICI Lombard has an IEEE rating, which is the highest claim paying ability. And there is an automatic capacity of about 180 crore plus. I would say probably best to handle a surge in the interest in insurance and maybe all the interesting things that SMEs and other companies will end up doing in this. So Rahul, what are you seeing in the market these days?
Rahul is on mute.
I'm audible now?
Yeah.
Yeah. So right now, we are seeing the surge for the traditional two products, which we have been offering already for last a decade or so. So what we're seeing is the fundamental of risk has not changed. It has only been amplified. So Neerja, can you go on to the next slide? So a lot of IT companies have only two types of risks fundamentally. One is with respect to the professional service or the IT service which they're developing, or the consultancy service which they're offering, or the data which they're handling. So these are the fundamental risks. Both of them can be covered to a larger extent using insurance. So we do have two products on that. The first one is the errors and omissions insurance. So those who have already dealt with, especially North American or European clients, this is something more like a contractual requirement. So for those who know what errors and omissions insurance is, it's basically an insurance policy which would cover any kind of mistakes, that is errors or omissions which you do while rendering a particular service. So it will cover your company for both the defense cost, that is the legal expenses, as well as the damages, whatever your client requests for. What we have been suggesting to our clients, and these four critical factors actually apply to almost all the IT companies who buy this EAP service. One is that make sure that your Indian jurisdiction, you're buying a policy in India, ensure that it has a jurisdiction of your clients. Let's say you're rendering a service to a client who's based out of New Jersey. So ensure your policy is covering that jurisdiction as well. Second important factor is employee dishonesty coverage. It's basically policy doesn't cover dishonest and fraudulent acts. So, however, it's not the company's intention. It's mostly the employee, one or two rogue employees who want to profiteer from that particular transaction. It will cover it up using an employee dishonesty coverage. So, this is the second most important thing you have to follow. The third one is with respect to your subcontractor. So a lot of times it happens that although you would have got the contract, part of the service you might have to outsource to do the testing part. But however, you don't know whether your subcontractor has an insurance or not. So tomorrow if something goes wrong at your subcontractor's hand and your client is also responsible for that, you can cover that in your policy as well. So ensure that the same thing is already covered in your policy. The fourth most important factor is right now in ENDO policy, the errors and omissions policy, we talk about something going wrong while performing the service. How about abstaining from doing a service itself? So if you fail to render a particular service, even that can attract a fine or a penalty or some kind of dispute from your client if you cover the failure to render of your professional services. So I have a case study, a real life case study. Can we move to the next slide, please?
While that is coming up, Rahul, if you don't mind, your voice is fading on and off. If it can be a little closer to the microphone, I think that will be helpful.
Is it audible now?
Better.
Okay.
Go ahead, please.
So this is a claim study we are talking about. So this is an ITS company based out of western part of India. So we had a multi-year contract with one of the largest American financial institutions, and they had to develop a custom software. However, they had a lot of variations and delivery requirements fulfilled by those financial institutions. Every 6 months, they had requested new and new deliveries to be deployed into the particular software. Subsequently, which the IT company could not deliver, and it led to the termination of the contract. After terminating the contract, the particular client of the IT company has put up a claim for $10 million. However, luckily they had a policy with ICICI Lombard. We swung into action. We analyzed and assessed the actual amount they need to pay, and it was brought down to 4 million. And the same amount was paid to them to an out-of-court settlement. And this company only had a revenue of 15 million. So imagine a company who's had a revenue of 15 million had to pay out 4 million in a single year. So it can have a devastating effect if you don't have an insurance. Yeah. Can we move to the next product? So cyber insurance, I'm sure everyone would have heard about it. It's the talk of the town, both in insurance and of the insurance industry. It is one of the fastest growing corporate insurance products across the world, not just India. So again, those who don't know what cyber liability insurance is, it covers your first party expenses, that is any expense you incur to bounce back from the cyber attack, as well as the third party expenses, that is the legal claims which because the data breach you have suffered. So we have been seeing an increased demand post this lockdown scenario. A lot of companies have mobilized their workforce, and the security staff is almost working at a skeleton level right now. So we are seeing an increased demand for this product. However, there are 4 things I would insist one should look out for. One is how the definition of data has been interpreted in the policy, whether your policy has adequate forensic limit, or your policy is covering business interruption or not. Cyber insurance can cover any business interruption that is, let's say, if there is a material interruption and your complete systems have been down due to the cyber attack, and you have been incurring net profit loss on hourly basis. Whatever you're losing per hour basis will be covered through this insurance. So that is something which you should look out for. The last one is the cyber extortion, also known as the ransomware attacks. So a lot of companies have been facing ransomware attacks now. So the ransom amount as well as the consultancy fees to evaluate the ransomware attack can also be covered under this policy. Four things are quite critical when you buy a cyber policy. So I do have one more example where we have paid an actual claim for cyber insurance. Can I have the next slide, please? So this is one of the biggest financial institution based out of Bombay, and they have suffered a data breach over here. So traditionally, BFSI companies have invested a lot in IT security, so it's not really that easy to get into their system. So hackers cleverly hacked onto a vendor's portal, and they extracted the credential from the vendors, and slowly they gained access into that BFSI system. And subsequently, they spent good 4 to 6 months in the system, understanding who are the critical employees, which employee had what kind of rights. Once they could gain access to those rights, they have slowly started extracting valuable data, the accounts information, financial information. And by the time it was found out, almost 32 MB of data was found to be extracted. So let me move. So far, the data has not been in the found, not even in the black market. There is no data liability as in such right now. But yeah, the investigation cost was almost around 2.63 crores. So all those things are again paid in the policy. So broadly, these two policies are being the fundamental risk for any IT company. However, we are seeing that this is becoming a staple kind of requirement for each and every company nowadays. Over to you now.
Thank you, Rahul. And I think those case studies were really useful. As I mentioned earlier, we will be sending the deck out to all the participants. And if you have questions, please do put them on the question panel here. We will try and answer as many of those as possible in the follow through too. So before I go to Pankaj, a couple of housekeeping points. All those who are not on mute, I'm not sure who are all channeled through the audio here. If you can please mute your channels if you're not speaking, that would be great. Couple of things I want to bring out before I hand off to Pankaj. I also want to get Ravi's perspective on this one. So Nirja, if you can go to the next slide. And while that is coming up, I want to bring out a simple parlance to my business, just so I put this in context for me. In the sports world, we always see this offense and defense thing being discussed. There's enough we need to do defending our business, and Rahul spoke about that. There's enough we need to do to preserve our capital and try and make as much of that as possible. And Nilesh talked about that. But at the same time, while this is a very interesting time, and I don't think anyone in our generation, or for that matter in the last 2 or 3 generations, have experienced anything nearly what we are experiencing right now. So being locked down for this extended period of time, being locked down at a time when the business volumes were where they were, the nature of the activities were where they were, this is a crisis, but at the same time, this is an opportunity. So where can we play the offense? And I think the one fortunate thing for all of us is the technology and some of the business models have come to a point where they're suddenly offering a whole lot of different perspectives to different people who are in the businesses. So there is an offensive line here that can be very beneficial, that can bring in a lot of disruptive business models. And who knows, we may be creating the next set of unicorns along the way. So, but before we get to Pankaj, where he talks about the India stack and all the interesting stuff on the digital banking side, Ravi, I would like to hear a couple of things from you on this particular thing, and then we'll go to.
Hey, thanks, Dina. Before I slip into this, I just wanted to spend a quick minute on the session that Rahul had spoken about insurance. We also serve the insurance industry, so there's some definite awareness and understanding. But yeah, more importantly, while insurance is important to probably, in the case of an event happening, you don't want to assume the risk. You are hence taking a policy to cover a potential financial impact. But more importantly, the kind of business that we are in, a technology business, I think prevention is better than cure. All of us agree. And we as a company have went of this pandemic and having to have people work from home significantly reassessed our risks from multiple angles, in terms of secure access, endpoint security that's required, several tools, like for example we did hear of weak links in public domain, the collaboration platforms that we have. So keeping all of this, we have taken some extremely sensible measures, and thankfully we are also in a journey which was in the area of enterprise risk management, and consequently we were able to assess multiple risks and significant number of risks that are there around the technologies that we are using inadvertently and advertently, that we can make a mistake. So we had a chance to view the risk from that filter and then take proactive measures towards that. That has been a good thing. So thanks, Rahul. I think definitely in terms of those products, I think each and every one business that is there, we ought to be considering and be aware of what's for us to protect our businesses. So coming back, I would say the next session that we're going to slip into is about the role of banks as an ecosystem anchor, for the digitally enabled business. Ever since over the last 7-8 years, I think the entire landscape of business has dramatically changed. See, world over, I understand SMEs actually account for more than 60-70% of business, and a significant amount of employment. There's only one little skew in the IT industry where the SMEs probably account for lesser business. But if you take a broad swath of industries, I think the story is very much true for India as well. You have extremely small micro enterprises, and here is where given the digitization and digitalization journey we've had with automatic payments, with mobile penetration, and intuitive experience that customers are looking for across multiple channels, and the plethora of products that have come into being adjacent to like in the area of financial products, insurance products, and several of these. I think the story has become extremely exciting, and because technology is all pervasive, I think it is it definitely establishes a fantastic opportunity for banks to probably not just be the bank, but then extend. They can not only offer the financial services, traditional financial services at large scale and at a reduced cost. I'm sure you'll agree that, and he's as a part of the NPCI advisory board, he would definitely fill in more of those details. But the digital bank, the neo banks that we're talking about, understandably have a cost structure which is just 30% of what the traditional banks are. And with increasing adoption of technology and extremely friendly and proactive regulatory environment that we have a fantastic stage that is set up for unleashing the animal instincts of innovation that is out there, for fabulous products, what do you call high volume, low touch, just in time sachet products, product innovation that's possible in several of those areas, including in the insurance industry that we're seeing. So how bank as a primary integrator at large for payments, receipts, limits, and maybe perhaps concierge of services for a plethora of things that a typical SME needs. That is something that we can probably discover and understand. And that's what would be the most exciting part of our discussion today. Next slide, please. So I will actually, this is just a sort of a placeholder to probably have Pankaj speak more of, what all innovations that have been happening over the last several years, 6-7 years, and which is actually leading us to having banks play a significant role as a ecosystem partner. We are talking about API enablement, which has become a very, very strong story. I remember the bank event, ICICI Bank event that happened early part of January, am I right? Wherein a significant initiative was announced, and to the best of my memory, I think there is a ICICI Bank's own initiative, which is 250 APIs, and a whole lot of partners being plugged into it to give fabulous services. The reason I'm excited about this and would like Pankaj to speak more about is that a whole lot of opportunity exists for SME IT companies to discover. So with that quick thing, I would ask Pankaj to please enlighten us.
Thanks, Ravi. Thanks for the introduction. You made it very easy for me to step in. Am I audible, Ravi? Am I audible,
Yep.
Dina?
Yes, you are.
Yeah. So, Nirja, if you could go to my slide, which is talking about the digital reforms, which Ravi kind of covered. So, I'm going to cover three themes in my deck. And the themes are centered around the digital reforms in India. It's going to talk about what are we seeing as trends in the business banking space, which is very, very relevant, for the SMBs. And then, a sneak preview of the various solutions that have evolved over a period of time by ICICI Bank, with feedback coming in from many of you and, many businesses that we deal with. And I fully agree with what Ravi had earlier started off with by saying that essentially, as a bank, we understand that we are the artist, which is a backstage artist. So bank has to be a backstage artist, and we have to allow the businesses to be the lead actors. And we have to make sure that you have enough and more time to concentrate on your core businesses. Many of the things that, we have done, I'll just give you a sneak preview of some of the solutions that, we have come together with. And maybe with some of them, you will also identify when you think back, after this session, as to what you picked up from the session. Some of those things can stay with you at the end of the session. So this is a very interesting slide. This talks about the backbone of the digital reforms in India, literally. And a very simple diagram of a fisher woman trying to sell fish, to her customers. And there are three broad layers which are covered in three circles. The first circle is the need layer of the fisherwoman. Then is the layer of the private layer. And when I say private layer, this is about investments which will be made by the private players in forming the digital backbone of India. And the third layer, which enables both the private layer and the need layer, is something which the government and all the linked bodies, NPCI together, is kind of creating together. So that's the public layer. And these three layers are going to form the backbone of the Indian digital infrastructure. If I talk about the layers, which are getting covered, and some of the good things that are happening on this side, I think, which is depicted on the right-hand side of the slide. The first and foremost thing on the lending side of the story, there is account aggregation, PCR, e-franking, e-NACH, e-signature, which will enable and is already enabling lending to be availed digitally. Second layer is to do with cross-border. A lot of work has already happened with the government digitizing the entire customs journey. And there's a new platform, which is called the National Trade Platform, on similar lines of what Singapore is seeing, where the entire stack of logistics, discovery of business, all the documentation and banking will all come together on one platform. Third is the identity layer, which is to do with the Universal Enterprise ID being created and being thought through by the MSME ministry. So that, just like Aadhaar is for, individuals, similarly, UEID is going to be created for individuals. Like Ravi mentioned, we are seeing a lot of action in terms of the investments which IT companies are making on cloud, and globally about 17% growth is being seen, in the IT budgets for companies, where we are seeing investments in the cloud infrastructure. And the private layer part of the story is being fueled by the large capital inflows that we are seeing in big techs and fintechs. And about 30% of the FDI which is coming into India in the last 2 years is coming through the fintechs. Nirja, next slide, please. The next slide typically covers the trends on business banking. And let me say it very, very confidently, when we have gone through various research reports and we are seeing and, meeting up with customers, one thing is very, very clear. Right now, this expenditure which SMBs today make on digital technologies is about 15 billion. This 15 billion US dollars is certainly going to be about 50 billion US dollars by 2025. And this is going to be channelizing in terms of investments that they will do in terms of improving the productivity of business, which is, doing most of the non-core and taking it away and improving the productivity. 20% of this money is going to get spent on digital discovery. Maybe another 30% is going to get covered in terms of basic connectivity, and about 10% is going to get spent on the payment infrastructure. So huge opportunities emerging in terms of the SMBs investing in digital technology. The other interesting thing is that Indian banking, both on the individual side and business banking side, is destined to see a growth both in absolute and in percentage contribution on digital. So just to give you the number context, in 2019, about 30 billion transactions happened in the entire Indian ecosystem. This is destined to become 300 billion by 2025. And the contribution of digital is about 60% of these transactions. 40% even today is happening through ATM cash check. This is destined to be 94%, with 59% of this coming through UPI. On the right side, typically is what is getting depicted and what is our view of how banking is going to emerge in times to come, where banking typically will migrate from being just a product to today being a service. And in times to come, it will be viewed as a lifestyle where open banking, hyper personalization, omnichannel experience is going to all govern the way we would experience banking in times to come. Neera, next slide, please. This slide actually covers briefly the impact of COVID-19, and this is possibly the house view, and this is mostly known to all of us. We are reading all research reports. But the good news, for this house is that IT/ITES clearly the bank is also seeing as a sector which is going to be least impacted by COVID. And I will go one step further with what was being said earlier by Dina. I think offense, here is going to be very, very crucial. Now I'll straight away jump into the solutioning. Nirja, next slide, please. This talks about specific opportunities that are opening up in India. We see a time where there will be deglobalization, which basically means investments more and more will happen within the country, localization, and therefore all the IT/ITES companies which are working with the government specifically, we see large growths coming in there. On technology, work from home is going to be the reality. And just to give you a number perspective, today ICICI Bank, about 15,000 employees today are in the office. Another 85,000 actually are working from home. The amount of investments that are getting made by banks and financial institutions and making sure, and many other corporates, in allowing and making sure that their teams work from home is going to be a big opportunity for the IT/ITES companies in times to come. Third, change in the entire retail business model. India has got about 78 lakhs 50,000 crores worth of retail segment as a whole, as a market, as a proportion of the overall GDP. It's a very, very significant number. Till now, only 20 lakh crores through all the digital modes. That's only 28%. So a large part of growth is going to be coming in development of mobile applications, UI, UX, in cloud, in the POS architecture, in QR codes, so on and so forth, to make sure that this 20 lakh moves very, very clearly towards that 78 lakhs. Now, let me talk about the thing that I started off with by saying that we as a bank want to be the backstage artist, and we want to allow you. Nija, next slide, please. We want to allow each one of you to be the actors. And we thought about all the journeys and Ravi, and of those phases of business, which is to do with the launch phase, growth phase. I think the stabilization phase, growth phase, and diversification phase. I think we looked at all these phases. We also looked at transactions of the customer, the business requirements of the customer, which is the x-axis. And then we looked at the customer journeys. So let me be very frank, in earlier times, business banking, only digitization was happening in the era of transactions. But I think when we took feedback from many and many clients like you, I think we thought that this entire journey, why can't we build a completely digital propositioning across all the needs that each of us are talking? And also, let's also look at the customer journeys on the y-axis. I'll talk about a few solutions which are very, very innovative and could also help you to reduce the time that you are spending on non-core activities, which was shown earlier. And I think the numbers are about 12% on finance and banking, and there were many more, 65% overall, which was spent in non-core. I think one of the most interesting area that I see where a lot of investments are today happening and a lot of interest is being generated by SMBs is the open banking architecture. Much like the neobanks and much like what we have seen in Europe, I think we are providing here a developer portal which allows companies to do a one-on-one integration with a bank. We have opened up 250 APIs plus. It's increasing by the day, where a company can successfully come in, do the discovery of the API, do testing, and also go live there and then on the developer portal. That actually brings down the time that is being taken in terms of onboarding a client. And this allows most of the customers who take the API for a payments or a collection, it solves the critical problem for a business of being perpetually reconciled. I think that's a big, takeaway from doing an API banking. We also have a one-to-many solution, which is the connected banking proposition. And many of you possibly would have solutions which are already being adopted by many SMEs. There is an opportunity for you to become a connected banking partner. And ICICI Bank, if you are part of a connected banking partner, automatically you get all the suite of APIs of the connected banking partner, and you can actually do payments and collections. Then you can sit on your own platform and do the banking sitting on your own platform. On lending, I think interesting propositions are emerging around cash flow based lending, which has actually not surfaced in India. And much like the NAFIN model in Mexico, or Lendo, or the Credit Sesame that we see in China, I think we see a lot of work that is happening today on cash flow based lending, because there are a lot of data sources today that the banks can capture real time, more than 100 sources that the banks can capture real time, and make sure that the lending is priced correctly and we are able to take appropriate risks. So you will see a lot which is happening on the purpose based OD that the bank has actually put in. We also have traditional products, but this is a very unconventional kind of product that we have come up with. Most importantly, I think on the cross-border side, I think which is a very, very document heavy kind of a business, which each one of us thought, we have come up with a trade online platform which allows each one of you to do inward remittances, outward remittances, and regularization of bills, and also knowing where you are in a transaction by adopting trade online. A very, very interesting number. 75% of today's cross-border transactions that the bank has today are actually happening digitally through this platform. And most customers are loving the entire user interface. These numbers used to be only about 10-15%, a couple of years back. The bank also is looking at, expanding and looking at, how can we be providers and somebody who's actually igniting more and more business and acting as catalysts to our customers. In that regard, there are two things that I wanted to mention. One, bank has come up with a BizCircle, which is a networking platform, just like LinkedIn is for businesses, and you have Facebook for friends. We've come up with a platform which allows each of our customers to engage and interact and network, which can add to the business of the SMB. Last but not the least, we've also come up with an innovation lab, which is based out of Bombay, and many fintechs or many startups who are interested in delivering products for the fintech industry actually work out of the lab. And we also take some positions in some of these companies where we feel that the potential is extremely high. Last but not the least, I think we thought that we could package all these solutions together, which are all digitally available, by getting this all together in a mobile application which is called InstaBiz, which has got all these services bundled into one. And this is like your office in your pocket. So essentially, this brings me to the close of my deck. I hope Ravi, I've been able to build upon the theme that you wanted me to build upon, and to take these solutions forward. The next slide, Nirja, which is the last one. We have the coordinates of the team, which is there, which can help you at the ground. We can anyway share it with the deck. With this, over to you, Ravi and Dina.
Thank you very much, Pankaj. That was exciting, and I can see where some of those areas can be of immediate relevance for our members, especially on the tech stack and some of those tools that you guys are bringing out. Obviously, I think there'll be a lot more questions as we go along, and we hope that you'll have a channel open for our members to continuously answer those questions. And I want Ravi to summarize these, and we have this slide that probably speaks back to our root theme, which is protect, secure, and thrive. But before we do that, just a pointer to all the audience. We have a few minutes left for Q&A, and we do want as many questions as possible. If we go over another 5 or 10 minutes beyond our 4 o'clock, I think in the interest of the interest, I think that's okay. So keep your questions ready while I ask Ravi to summarize our session through this slide. So over to you, Ravi.
Yeah, actually, these are tough times, and tough times provide an opportunity for us to embrace change, reinvent, and then move on. That's, I think, we've heard a whole lot of innovation that's happening. In that sense, that sets us up for adopting to adapt. What I mean is change is inevitable, and then if we invest make the right investments, and then we would be equipped to probably handle the whole situation much better. So whatever that we've tried to put in here in communicate in this slide is essentially something that it was extremely experiential for us as a company. When what we thought was it was extremely important for us to be responsive to the situation, and we did take a whole lot of measures, including putting up a task force in place, and then choosing to be extremely transparent in our communication to customers, and then thereby build trust. And then of course the technologies that we had to be putting in place for ensuring secure transactions and secure delivery of services with customers. And finally, of course, as Pankaj so eloquently put, there's a world of opportunity that's getting set up because of digitalization, and this pandemic again, in some sense, especially for digital enablement, is giving us a fantastic opportunity to actually leapfrog all the issues and then hopefully embrace the challenge for a brighter future growth for all our businesses. Dina, you may want to please conclude with any other additional points.
Thank you, Ravi. I think you summarized it well, but I do want to immediately jump on to question and answers. That way we can get some out. I'm seeing two on our chat list here. So while audience are getting ready to get more questions, I'll go and ask the first one. And I think this is sounds like it's for Nilesh. But even though Sesha Rao, I think, is addressed to Rahul. The question is, it was mentioned during the discussion on liquid funds that the return is 4.5% to 5%. And he thought that liquid funds were treated as debt funds and dividends are not taxable. So Nilesh, you can answer that, or if you choose to send a detailed answer later, either way, your call.
Yeah. No, so it's correct that liquid funds are treated as debt funds. However, with the new tax regime, all dividends are now going to be taxable in the hands of the investors. So this regime change has happened this year itself. And, till last year, obviously, all the dividends would get tax deduction at source, in the sense, there was a dividend distribution tax, so there was nothing which would get taxed in the hands of the recipient. That regime has changed this year onwards, and everything is taxable. Since liquid funds, the only difference being that, they have a very shorter duration, shorter maturity profile, and therefore, historically, most of the short-term money, corporate money would tend to kind of flow into this segment. And earlier, the rate of taxation would used to be kind of a little different, but otherwise now everything is the same. So dividends are clearly not exempt; they're taxable in the hands of the recipient.
Yeah, Pankaj, so there's one question. Thanks, Nilesh. That was helpful. Pankaj, I think the next two questions are for you. The question is on APIs. Are they open to all your customers?
Yes, they're open to all.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
They're open to all.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
That answers the question. The next one, it's a slightly longer question, so I will read it impromptu for the benefit of everyone else. How can bank become or give service customers lean service to reduce waiting time, reduce overhead charges? Smart banks are smart banks and ongoing improvements. They should help customers, SMEs for compliance with government, like Reserve Bank coordination. That question was from an anonymous attendee, so please go ahead. Who would like to take this?
I can take this if you want.
Yeah, please.
So I think the answer lies in some of the solutions that I had shown as part of the stack, I think, which was to do with API banking or the developer portal, or a very simple solution like a bulk payment platform for many companies who are doing salary payments today. That itself, becomes a manual exercise. You send out the file or you put it onto, our internet banking platform. There are very interesting bulk payment platforms also, which, you can have. So my request will be, and we can, circulate the deck. I think if some of the solutions can be adopted by you, then certainly the wait time will reduce. I've also seen, let me add also here that, we always have seen that customers who are transacting digitally with us, the net promoter scores of those customers are always high. So my understanding is that most of the customers who are, digitally adopting these solutions are normally satisfied. In any case, if some solution doesn't work, we are always there to, help you. On the part on the compliance with the government and RBI, I fully agree. And, as a AD banker, or also as a banker when we are providing lending limits to you. I think it is our responsibility to work with the various government and related entities in taking up your issues and resolving them. Many examples where customers have brought up solutions to us, where we have gone to RBI and like the video KYC thing that I was showing. I think lots of work, lot of customers that told us that video KYC is the requirement, is the core requirement, and few banks actually front-ended this entire thing with the Home Ministry and also RBI, and that the entire thing got started. So I fully agree with you that we should play a very active role in working with you, with the government and the regulator. Dina, I hope I have answered the question.
Absolutely. And as I mentioned earlier, I think our channels are open. So if anyone has question later on, please feel free to send them to us, and then we will try and get all of them answered. I don't see any more question. Hold on. Just as I said, yeah, I think there's one more question. Can you elaborate more about neo-banking? How physical branches and neo-banking will coexist in coming time? This is from Chandra Bhushan.
Yeah, so this is for me, Dina.
Yes, please.
Pankaj. Yeah, so neo-banking is nothing but, it's the open API architecture that, we spoke of. Earlier, banks were hesitant, and, there was this feeling that, can we expose these APIs to our customers? I think the thought is that, customers are demanding for it. And if you have the adequate security protocols, I think, you can, course, with all the security protocols in place. I think what it is going to do is that I can just give you a very simple example. Any customer who's having the Zoho ERP or the Zoho accounting system, for example, I'm taking an example here, and he's on that platform, and if he signs up, and he's also an ICICI Bank customer, and if he signs up for a content banking proposition, then what it actually does is that when any of the payable files are getting made, you can just click. There's one click that you can do, and the payments can be made from the bank, and automatically the reversal can come in from the bank statement, which can get posted on the accounting platform. So typically, an accounting and banking, most of the customers spend time in reconciling it. Lots of time gets wasted, which was part of the non-core time that Ravi had put in earlier. By adopting this simple solution, you can be perpetually reconciled. Coming to the next part of the question, which is physical branches and neo-banking, will it coexist in coming time? I personally feel they will, because in any market, there will be customers, who will still prefer the physical route, and neo-banking and physical, I feel, will coexist. That is also happening in the Western world. So it will coexist. And let me again say that, the opportunity of the overall size itself is so large that, adoption on the digital will happen on one side, and the overall market will also grow. So that will also give some space to the physical side of the business.
Right. Absolutely. I think that definitely explains all that, Pankaj. And one thing I would like to highlight, and Ravi and I were going through some of these points earlier. I thought we saw as many as 45 plus or so ready interfaces that you guys have already built to the ERPs and other things. And I think that's a very impressive number. So I hope there is enough available as options for different people using different sets of software to integrate into the banking.
Yeah, you can do one-on-one also. So if you're not through any of these partners, let's say you're having a Tally accounting software, and that is not part of the overall content banking suite, then also you can do one-on-one integration, which we can do through the developer portal.
Yep.
If you are in any of these partners, then you can go to the partner, and any of these customers there in the house right now also can also become a content banking partner. There's no fee for being a content banking partner. And if their solutions are being adopted by thousands of SMEs or SMEs, then all those customers get this advantage. There's a big USP that this IT company can have to talk about, when he's competing in the marketplace.
Great. There is one question in terms of whom should I get in touch with for speaking more about the API integrations?
In the deck, the deck coordinates are provided. So when the deck gets circulated, it is Rajesh Saraf and Sandeep Reddy based out of Hyderabad, and those mobile coordinates will be provided there, and they can get in touch for the integration.
Yeah, and then I was also going to suggest that if you don't have anything, please feel free to write to info@hysia.in, and they'll be more than happy to redirect those conversations. I will ask one last question, Pankaj, and then we'll close this. So all these, I'm assuming, are already on the InstaBiz app that people can download and look for, right?
Yeah, most of it will be InstaBiz, but wherever the desktop requirement, those solutions will have to go through the RCIB interface, which is the internet banking interface.
Got it. And let me just see if I believe we are done, exhausted all the questions on the chat window. And as I said, always there is more option for you to seek out additional answers through email, etc. And as a close-up, I would like to thank all of you from ICICI and ICICI Lombard, Nilesh, Pankaj, and Rahul. Thank you for taking time out and answering some of these questions. And I think I got some ideas, and I'm sure everyone else on the session got everything. And Ravi, thank you for being the industry representative for us here and putting the, the user perspective on this. And from HICIA standpoint, Neeraja, Srini, and Murli, thank you very much. Yet another successful net series, I hope, from a relevant standpoint to all our member base. And all the attendees, thank you very much. And I hope this was a valuable session.
Thank you.
Pankaj, Rahul,
Thank you,
and
Dina.
Nilesh. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Murli, Dina, and Ravi.
Thank you.
Thank you, and all the other panelists.
Pleasure. Hope to get connected on this. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Yes.